Sorry.
All right. Shas Kiddushin. Finishing up Seder Nashim. Shas Kiddushin is very much like a postscript to all of Seder Nashim, where, of course, it deals with laws of marriage, which all of Seder Nashim was dealing with laws of marriage and the intricacies of laws of marriage. This really touches on most of the laws that were discussed in the previous Masechtas in the Seder. Obviously, it is heavily focused on the actual kinyan of the Kiddushin itself, the actual acquisition, that transaction, that act of actually becoming married is discussed at great length in the Masechta. And then at the end of the Masechta, in the fourth parak, there is much discussion about who you can and cannot marry, and laws pertaining to yuchsin in general, a person's heritage. Okay, so this is this is a basic summary of Masechtas Kiddushin for prakim. The first parak is one of the longest prakim in all of Shas. It's 40 dapim is the first parak of Masechtas Kiddushin, which is extremely long. And so tonight I want to do the first Gemara in the second parak. It encompasses a lot of the sugyas that are discussed in a very succinct kind of way, but it discusses it touches on a lot of different sugyas that are discussed in the Masechta. So it says the Mishnah the following: Haish Mekadesh, a man could get married, Bo B'shlucho, whether with his either he could do it himself or he could appoint a shaliach. He can appoint an agent to do the kiddushin. Ha'isha, continues the Mishnah, Ha'isha miskadeshes ba'u b'shulcha. A woman could get married. Either she could be the one that is there at the marriage, or she could have an agent accept the marriage on her behalf. Ha'ish mekadesh bita kishihi nara bo b'shlucha. A man can marry off his daughter while she is a na'ara, which is a girl just, between 12 and 12 and a half years old, before she becomes a bulgaris. Bo u bishlucho, either himself or through an agent. Continues the Gemara.
He can marry her younger than that, no?
He can marry her even younger than that. So Rashi discusses why the Mishnah chooses dafka nara. Rashi basically says that would be a more common scenario. Okay. Says the Gemara the following. The Gemara asks, Hashta b'shlucha mikadesh. It's such a pashit question the Gemara asks. It's unbelievable. If a person can get married through a shliach, you can hire an agent, as the Mishnah says, to get married. So bo mibaya. Then why do you have to tell me that he can do it? Remember, what did the Mishnah say? Haish mikadesh bo ubeshlucho. Either he could do it himself or he can appoint an agent. If the Mishnah just said Haish mekadesh b'shlucho, that a person can appoint an agent to get married, obviously he could do it himself. Why do you have to tell me? Right, we already know. We know from the very first Mishnah in the Masechta, right? The very first Mishnah in the Masechta is Ha'isha niknes b'shlosha drachim. Right? There's three different ways for her to get married. Who else is giving the ring, right? Obviously he could do it himself. From the Torah, right? When a man marries a woman. So Amar Rabbi Yosef says, no, the Mishnah is trying to teach me something over here. That mitzvah bo yoser mibishlucho. The person who does the mitzvah themselves, it's better. There's a greater mitzvah than if you appoint an agent to perform the mitzvah for you. And the Gemara points out a few examples of this. Ki had Rav Safra Machrach Reisha, just like Rav Safra, he would prepare the meat for Shabbos. He would cook the lamb head. Rava Machlich Shibuta, Rava would make the herring for Shabbos. Okay, so you see that it's better to do the mitzvah yourself than to have someone else perform the mitzvah on your behalf. So I just it's almost tangentially, because it's not what we're going to be focusing on the entire shiur, but the whole concept of shlichus is an important concept just to understand that there is such thing as agency in Torah law, that if I assign someone to, I give them a ring and I say, please, there's a woman that lives in, Yehupitzville, and I'd like for you to give her this ring on my behalf in order for us to be married. He'll go, she accepts. She is not married to the one who gave her the ring. She is married to me. Now, this concept of shlichus, as Rabbi Yosef Engel says, is there are really two ways of looking at it. Either it's that the shliach is like an extension of my hand. It's like I am actually doing it, but it's like I'm Batya, right? When Batya, stretched out her hand in order to grab Moshe. So it's like my hand extends to wherever the shliach is, and it's like I'm doing it myself. Or the chiddush of shlichus is simply that the shliach's actions, the agent's actions, relate back to the mishalech, to the one who sent the fellow. So it relates back. So there's a number of different nafkaminas for this, a number of practical differences between these two ways of looking at it. And that, for now, I want to just point out a couple of exceptions to the concept of shlichus. Number one is we have a concept of ein shliach ledvar avera. Okay, there's no such thing as agency when it comes to doing an avera, which is a machlokas in the Pnei Yeshua and Rabbi Kiva Eger regarding why it is that there is no such thing as shlichus when it comes to an avera. Either it's because
what do you mean by that?
The Gemara has of divrei Arav, divrei Talmud, divrei Mishomim, that if the Rebbe tells you to do something or the student tells you to do something, who are you going to listen to? Obviously, you should listen to the Rebbe. Who's the Rebbe? Rebbe is HaKadosh Baruch Hu. So God tells you that you're not allowed to you're not allowed to steal something, and you go and steal it on my behalf. So you're the one that stole it, right? That's on you. That's not on me, because God told you not to steal. God told you not to kill. God told you not to charge interest. God told you not to violate Shabbos and the like. All of these things, God told you not to cut off your payas. There's any of the averos in the Torah of the 365 averos in the Torah, God tells us not to do them. Just because I told you to do it, right? If I told you to jump off the bridge, you're going to do it. That's basically the svara. The other way of it is that every shlichus needs to have a kabbalas hashlichus. That when I hire someone to be an agent, so they need to accept that agency, right? When I tell you to go and be a shliach, or let's say to get married on my behalf, so there it is obvious that I want what you're doing to relate back to me. It's obvious. Why? Because I want to marry this woman. If I tell you to go do an avera, says the Pnei Yeshua, and you go and do it, what am I going to say when you come back and say, I cut off, that kid's payas for you? Okay, what are you gonna say when the person returns? What? I was joking. I didn't want you to actually do that. The shlichus is lacking. The agency is lacking. Okay, since it's something that's a chova, the agency is lacking in and of itself. Okay.
Question.
Yeah.
So what if it's like an avera for you, but not for them?
Very good. Wow. That's a very good question. So this is discussed in the Gemara Bava Metzia on Daf Yud Beis. What the din would be in that case. I unfortunately do not remember exactly what the Gemara's conclusion is. But let's pull it up. In the meantime, while I'm pulling this up, I want to point out another important exception. So that's the first exception of ein shliach ledvar avera. Bava Metzia daf. What is it? Yud Aleph, Yud Beis. Hold on. The second exception.
You realize you're actually checking whether you got the right page now.
Okay, hold on. Amar Ravina, the Gemara in Bava Metzia daf Yud Amud Beis. Amar Ravina, hey Chamrina de ein shliach ledvar avera. To answer your question, Jacob, I believe the Gemara is. I could be completely misremembering the Gemara over here, but Amravina Hecha Amrina Dein Shliach L'Avera. When do we say that there's no such thing as shliach, an agent for an avera? Hecha de shliach bar chiyuvahu. That is only when the agent is also chayiv in this. Okay, so Ravina is saying that you both need to be liable. You both would need to be liable for the prohibition. Okay. The Gemara is dealing with specifically deals with things regarding chatzer and a kinyan chatzer. Okay, fine. Now the Gemara says, "Amrs isha ve'eved b'nei chiyuv ninhu hashtami alesu." Okay, no, nigarshi isn't nischar eved. Okay, heich amrin. Okay, Rav Sama Amar heich amrin ein shlich v'arvei heich the I by avid the I by loy avid. Aval chatzer the bal karcham. Okay, okay, inami. Okay, here we go. Ish the Amar la Isha. A man tells a woman the following: Afike li katan. Okay, cut the payas off of a katan for me. Here's the Gemara. Okay, so now men have a prohibition against cutting their payas. Women do not. This is exactly your question. No Rabbeinu Tam. Yeah.
Yeah.
So Afike li katan. Wow, did you ever see this Gemara before? No, right? That's why they call you.
But I think I know about like telling a little kid to do something.
Rabbeinu Tam. His mom, she's a bal machshove. Yeah, he's a charif. He's a charif. Okay, you're gonna do great in the mirror, Tzadik. Atikile katan. Okay, go cut off the pace of a katan from Milahach lishna the amar kol hecha di by avid I by loy avid loy mechayven shlucho. Inami I by avid I by loy avid loy mechayven shlucho. Lishna the amar kol hecha the shliach la bar chiyuva. So basically, the Gemara says so. It's a machlokas in the Gemara between Ravina and Rav Sama. Okay.
The machlokas is what? Whether or not you can tell someone to do something you're not allowed to do.
Whether or not if the shliach is a bar chiyuva, whether or not their action is going to relate back to me if it's for an advar avera. Generally, we say for advar avera, their action does not relate back to me. But if they are not, if it's not an avera for them, maybe it will relate back to me. That's what it seems.
But the example they give is a katan, as opposed to like, let's say, I'm a kohen.
The shliach is.
Sorry?
I tell a woman to go cut off the payas of a child.
Oh, okay. So she has no isser, so she can do it.
She has no isser. I have an isser. Okay? Okay.
And Rabbi, second question?
Yeah, Tzaddik?
You've had your question for the day.
No. What if
Not done yet.
you ask the shliach to marry someone for you that is an avera? Does the shliach get married to them?
Tzaddik, read ahead in the Gemara. Isn't that the next case the Gemara brings up? Hold on. Here.
How do you get married to someone that's an avera?
Amar la li Yisrael. A Kohen tells a Yisrael, say the kidei shali isha gerusha. Go marry a divorcee for me. This is exactly it's another nafkamina in the same shaila, Rabbeinu Tam. Very good.
No, I mean if a Kohen does another Kohen.
But he's marrying her for you, he's not marrying her for himself. Like the other case was you were doing the actual sin. What sin is he doing now? He's actually doing.
Guys, 1 second. Here, Yam Tomar Afilo Amar LaKohenami. Tosfos asked the question. Tosfos asked your question. Okay.
And was it Rabbeinu Tam or just regular Tosfos?
On the ball tonight. Whoa. I didn't even prepare these Gemaras. You're flying through Shas. You didn't want to say I'm Kiddushin. You're flying through Shas. V'yesh Lomar says, so it's the following answer. The Kohen Mikre Bar Chiyuva. Tosas answers, with this regard, the Kohen is called the Bar Chiyuva. Hoyel, because im mikadsha la'atzmo chayiv, because if he were to decide, you know what, forget this guy, I want to marry her. Okay, he gets there, he sees her, and says, you know what, I'd like to marry her myself. So he throws the other guy's ring in his pocket and takes out his own ring and decides to marry her. So then he'd be chayiv. Aval Yisrael afal gav. Aval Yisrael afal gav de over mishum lifnei iver leisitein michshol kitch mekansha the kohen. Kiven di mekansha la'atzmo loy mechayiv loy mikri bar chiyuva. Says Tosfos. Tosfos is basically answering that the Kohen, since he would be liable if he married her, That's called a shliach l'dvar avera. Okay, good.
So then, is he
One
married
other
to her?
exception. What was that, Sadik?
Is he married to her?
Is
Is the marriage valid?
How do we know, Gavin?
Huh?
How do we know that they would be married?
Because what's it called? If you marry it's just an issa, but not an issa kares.
Very good, right? It's just a lav. It's just a lav. Very good. This is unbelievable. This is unbelievable. I am getting so much hana right now that you have mamish. You guys are going through Gansa Shas, right? Because of the Gemara Nivamas, right? The Gemara Nivamas says that since it's only an Isser Lav, it's not an Isser Kares, so then the Kiddushin is going to be Chal. Okay.
Yeah, by the way, I'm not sure if I say Hadron Alach on Perek Shlishi. I'm not sure if I want to ever go back to
You should. You know that's the joke that so Yevamos comes right after Chagiga.
Yeah.
Chagiga means celebration, right? So a festival. So when you start Mesachas Yevamos after finishing Chagiga, the joke goes, the famim afilu hachagiga nigman. Sometimes the party has to come to an end, right? That's it. Okay, back to Kiddushin. So there's one other exception to the concept of shlichus, and this is pointed out by the Tosas Rid over here. The Tosas Rid, who I don't know where the Tosas Rid is tonight. I thought the Tosas Rid was joining us, that's why I'm bringing in a Tosas Rid. Rabbeinu Elon Daniel, the Tosos Rid, Rabbeinu Elon Daniel. So tell her Tosas Rid that we were learning. We learned a lot from Rabbeinu Tam already, but now we're going to learn the Tosas Rid. So the Tosas Rid says that there's one other exception to the concept of shlichus. He says, L'chol dvar mitzvah, a yoel hashliach. Let's say, says the Tosas Rid, I tell a shliach to go do a mitzvah for me. Omer adam lechavero, shav besuka ba'avurai, go sit in a sukkah on my behalf. Hanach tefillin ba'avurai, go put on tefillin on my behalf. Right, Rabbeinu Tam, don't get any ideas in your head. Okay.
No, I'm his shliach for Pusukei Zimra on Shabbos.
Very good. Why is Charlie not around?
Huh? No, I'm his shliach. I have to do it on his behalf so he can sleep.
So if I tell someone to put on tefillin on my behalf, okay, so does it work? Okay, let's not assume that it's because the person was trying to be lazy. Let's assume that the person knew that they were going to be stuck in surgery all day, right? So I'm not going to be able to put on tefillin today. So can you put on tefillin on my behalf? Does it work? Says the Tosas Rid, no. V'lav milsahi, doesn't work. Shamitzvah shechayvu hamakom la'asos begufa. When God commands you to do a mitzvah with your physical body, there's a difference between a chalos, a result-oriented mitzvah, and an action-oriented mitzvah. Kiddushin, while there is an action associated with the way that you acquire her, ultimately, it's a result-oriented mitzvah. We'll get to, by the way, soon whether or not it is a mitzvah. But it's result-oriented. You want something to take effect. When it comes to a mitzvah, though, that I have to do with my physical body, sitting in a sukkah doesn't have a chalos. There's no there's no status that befalls upon me when I sit in the sukkah. There's nothing that takes effect. I'm fulfilling a mitzvah. I'm doing a mitzvah. There's no such thing as, when you put on tefillin, yes, you rise in levels of kedusha, but you have to actually be wearing the tefillin in order to do that. So says the Tosas Rid, it wouldn't be shaykh then to say that you can appoint a shliach to do a mitzvah shabbat for you. Okay?
But isn't there a technical problem with those two particular mitzvahs? In the sense that I'm obligated myself to wear tefillin or sit in a sukkah. So if I'm doing it, how am I supposed to do it for you? Because
you can give 100 different examples.
Okay.
Right? I mean, think of any. I want you to fulfill my obligation of making Kiddush on my behalf. Now, you can do it if I'm listening,
Mhm.
That's being Yotze through Shomer Kaona. But
Mhm.
if I have no shaykhis to what's happening, I'm not there, right? It's not it's not possible, right? Can't appoint a shliach to do something in Yehupitzville for me. If it's something that I need to do with my body, it's a mitzvah that involves a physical act. Okay, as opposed to, he says, as opposed to getting the Kiddushin, that's not the case. Okay, is Kiddushin a mitzvah? So let's continue in the Gemara over here. Okay, just because it's we'll continue in the Gemara in a second. We'll come back to the Gemara soon. Okay, so the Mishnah does say that there's the Gemara just told me that there is a mitzvah to get married, right? Rav Yosef said, Rav Yosef, mitzvah bo yoser mibishlucho. So mitzvah for me is, for me to do it myself is better than to have an agent do it. So is Kiddushin a mitzvah? Says the Rambam. Yes, of course, obviously, based on this Gemara. Says the Rambam, Kodem Matan Torah, before the giving of the Torah, Hayadam Pogea Isha B'Shuk, a person meets a woman, they start living together, and then that's it. They're married, right? That's just the way it worked. Once the Torah was given, it's obvious. There was a certain there's rules and regulations to how a person gets married. There needs to be a kinyan, edim in front of witnesses. Then she is his wife. Shenamar, the Pasuk says, Ki yikach ish isha uva eleha. Okay, good. Says the Rambam further. V'lichunin elu mitzvos ese shel toirahim. These actions of acquisition with regard to getting married is a positive commandment from the Torah. Okay, he goes through then the different ways that one gets married. But the Rambam is very clear, he's not mincing his words here, that there is a mitzvah from the Torah to get married. In fact, there seems to be a Gemara in the Maseches Beitza that talks about this. The Gemara talks about how the Mishnah says that you're not allowed to get married on Shabbos or Yontif. And it has it in the list of it being a reshus, that you can't, because you can always get married another time. Okay, but the Gemara says v'ha mitzvah ka'avid. What do you mean? Why can't you get married on Shabbos or Yontiv? You'd be fulfilling the mitzvah. So the Gemara gives an answer: Lo tzricha de'islei isha obanim. No, the case would be if the person already had children, whatever it might be. But you see very clearly from the Gemara over here that the Gemara refers to Kiddushin as a mitzvah.
So it is a mitzvah as opposed to like a preparation for mitzvah? Oh. In the sense that in order to do Puravu, you got to be married.
Very good. Take a look at Rashi. Rashi over here says, hold on one second. Why are we saying, well, don't just say the Kiddushin is a mitzvah and then that's it. Throw your hands up in the air like the Rambam said, oh, Kiddushin is a mitzvah, mitzvah. Okay, says Rashi, it's not like eating matzah or shaking a lulav. Shenose Isha. Why does the Gemara refer to it as a mitzvah? Because when you get married, lifros v'lirbos, it's in order to fulfill Peru Uravu. So it would seem like from Rashi, that Rashi is saying that you don't have to say Kiddushin is the mitzvah, but rather Kiddushin is the what we would call machshire mitzvah, the preparatory mitzvah. It's just a heichitimsa. You need to do it in order to fulfill the mitzvah of Peruvu. Okay? The Rush seems to take the same approach over here. The Rush, and again, I'm not saying it's mukhrach. I'm not saying it's a perfect reading of Rashi. I think you could read Rashi that Rashi is saying that there's two mitzvos, but one does lead into the other. But it seems to be even clearer in the Rush, that the Rush says that Kiddushin is not a mitzvah in and of itself. It's not an isolated mitzvah, but rather it's a preparatory step that needs to be taken in order to fulfill the mitzvah Puravu. And he points this out from the language of the bracha we recite before doing Kiddushin. My mevarchin, what's the bracha? Asher Kiddishanu b'mitzvos v'tzivanu al harayos, that God has commanded us to fulfill the mitzvah, has made us holy through the mitzvah. Al harayos, with regard to prohibited relationships, asar lanu esar usos, that prohibited to us are married people. Es hanasuos lanu ayde chupa v'kiddushin, that in order to be mutter to a woman, you have to be married to her. Baruch Mekadesh Yisrael. So this is the blessing of This is the bracha. So then he adds in the nusach over here. Okay, fine. Yesh makshin. I have to ask the following question on nusach bracha zu with regard to the nusach of the bracha. Lama ein mavarchen asher kedishanim b'mitzvos v'tzivanu l'kadis ha'isha. Why don't you just make a simple birchas hamitzvah like we do by every other birchas hamitzvah? When you want to shake a lulav, Baruch atah Hashem Elokeinu melech haolam asher kedishanim b'mitzvos al netilas lulav, right? With regard to eating matzah, asher kedishanim b'mitzvos al achilas matzah. Okay, it's a very straightforward. And the Gemara in Pesachim on Daf Zayin discusses how brachos are supposed to be made, and that is the basic formulation of a birchas mitzvah, of a bracha that is done upon performance of a mitzvah. There's three different types of brachos. There is birchas hanenin upon, for food and benefit. Okay, there's birchas hamitzvah, the blessings you make upon fulfilling mitzvahs, and birchas sheva v'odah, blessings that are made in order to thank Hashem, to recognize God's role in the world, etc. But we don't use the standard nusach of a birchas hamitzvah when it comes to getting married. We use this much longer rendition that we say, going through all these different aspects of Kiddushin. V'od heichem atzinim bracha kazos. Where do we find such a bracha shemevarchen amasha asar lanu HaKadosh Baruch Hu, that we recognize in the bracha that we are not allowed to do certain things, right? When we make the bracha on matzah, we don't say asher kedishanu b'mitzvos v'tzivanu al iser chametz the al achilas matzah. We don't recognize chametz when we make the bracha of eating matzah, right? Why would we recognize
Havdalah, right?
What?
We sort of have that format with Havdalah, like Hamavdil ben Kadosh L'chol ben Or L'choshek. I guess it's sort of at least contrasting two things.
Yeah, but this is talking about a birchas hamitzvah, right? Where why are you bringing up something it's not shaykh to recognize? To why do you have to bring up the averos, right? Right? We don't. He points out, like by shechita, we don't say that God prohibited us from eating from live animals and he made it mutter for us to eat shechted animals. Okay. Continues the Rush, and he says, lama lanu lahaskir chuppah bekan. Why do I need to mention chuppah? Chuppah is the second stage. It's nesuin, right? Kiddushin is the first stage. Chuppah is the second stage. We discussed that when we did Maseches Ksubis. So says the Rush, v'nir ali ki bracha zu. And so it appears to me, because this bracha ain't a bracha lasos hamitzvah, ki priver rivya hainu kiyum hamitzvah. Says the Rush, this bracha is not a bracha to do the mitzvah of Kiddushin, but rather it is because Kiddushin is the preparatory step for Pruruvu. That is the mitzvah. Kiddushin is just the heichetimsa. It's just the preparatory step. And therefore, this bracha is a bircha shavach v'hoda, according to the Rush. It's a bracha of praise of God. It is not a bracha of a birchas ha-mitzvah. Okay, so this is my basic machlokas between the Rush and the Rambam, whether or not Kiddushin is a mitzvah or not. What would the Rush do with all of these Gemaras that say it's a mitzvah? So it could be like the way Rashi did it. That basically Rashi said that mitzvah is lav dafka. Mitzvah could also refer to machshirei mitzvah, the preparatory stages of a mitzvah. Okay, let's just finish off this Gemara as we close out over here. The Gemara continues, and it says Igadamri baha isura nami is bay. There are those that say that there is actually a prohibition of getting married through a shliach. What would be the prohibition of getting married through a shliach? Because Rabbi Yehuda Amarav, like Rabbi Yehuda Amarav said, Rabbi Yehuda Amarav, Aser la'adam shikidesh is isha ad shir ena, that it is prohibited for a person to get married until they see their wife. Shema yiraba davar meguna niskanin Allah, that maybe he's going to meet her, he's not going to like her, and then that's going to be a problem. And look at what Rabbi Yehuda Amarav says for Rahmana Amar, and the Torah tells us, V'yahavta l'recha kamocha. That part of V'yahavta l'recha kamocha, especially in a marriage, really in any relationship, is making sure that you are considerate to the other person. You can't just do things that are going to benefit you. You have to be considerate to the other person. That is basic V'yahavta l'recha kamocha. And says our Gemara over here that there's actually an Isser involved in V'ahavta l'recha kamocha, right? That it would be Baha Isura. It would be a prohibition. What's the prohibition? Says Rabbi Yosef Engel, it's the prohibition of Lo Sisna Es Achicha B'Levavecha. You cannot carry any hatred toward your fellow in your heart. Because if you don't fulfill V'ahavta l'recha kamocha, if you're not careful about how my action is going to affect someone else, so then ultimately that's going to lead to sinah, it's going to lead to hatred, and there's going to be greater divides amongst Klal Yisrael. Okay, this was the basic one-footed summary of some of the laws in Maseches Kiddushin. We've now completed Maseches Kiddushin, Seder Nashim, God willing, next week. Bava Kama, God willing. All right, we'll stop here.
One day in person, Rabbi.
Oh, Amen, from your mouth to God's ears.
This doesn't have to do with the